I was an alcoholic and drug abuser for some years, and I was diagnosed with major depression. And so I went through crises of suicidal ideations on several occasions, suicidal attempts on several occasions. My life was in a complete turmoil.
My name is Jane. Went through some traumatic things. My parents dying, losing a job, foreclosure on my house. I was scared. Something inside of me just said, you can't go anywhere until you get help.
Crisis services are so important. We meet the need of the individuals when they are sometimes at their lowest point.
A lot of times with our clients, there's no family support there. They have very little financial support. And so when they walk into our facility, they immediately have that support system.
Usually in the past, though, I would say effort, I would go and get messed up. And that's why I finally just quit it and just,
So the people that we help, they're in a crisis. So from our assessment, we determine what level of care that they may need.
They can see a psychiatrist, therapist, peer support services, group therapy, so we can get them stable and back on the road to recovery and just instill hope.
AHS, they took me by the hand and they put me as a priority, and it's just awesome. I mean, they're like my family. Probably the biggest change I've seen is my determination and will to keep going.
I came to AHS for help and getting my life back on track. They talked to me with compassion. They gave me some insight. They gave me some hope. And actually, I got back stable on my medications, and I left the alcohol and drugs alone. And from that day to this one, it's been a totally 360-degree turnaround for me. Long days and long nights. So I made a choice to do something with my life to different, be able to help the next person. So I'm on the opposite side of the desk now. So each day I come to work with a purpose. My purpose is to shed some light on someone that your life can change. You just got to put forth some effort.
I'm so proud of the clients we serve, like Jane and Abraham, to see somebody that was homeless get into our housing. Someone who was down and out and addicted to alcohol and drugs is now one of our employees. And my hope for AHS is to really continue to grow and expand our crisis services.
No chest pain?
We see so many people. We have really double the volume of any other center in Tennessee. And we really need more space just so that it can be safer and more therapeutic. We don't want to overburden the jails and the emergency rooms, and that's not the correct treatment for someone who needs behavioral health treatment. They need to be in our environment.
We served 15,000 people last year alone, and we think the community deserves a state-of-the-art crisis center that we can all be proud of to help us promote wellness and reduce stigma.
We have incredible staff here, a very dedicated staff. They go above and beyond every day.
I love working with such a dedicated team of professionals, and I love seeing people's lives improve. I mean, we really impact individuals and their families at their lowest point.
To me, the best part of the job, hearing from family or just hearing from the patient how much you help them.
We have clients come in and they feel real low, and when I can say something to them, let them know where I've been, that I've been in the seat that they're sitting in, to me that's giving them a little bit of hope.
Don't quit. Don't give up.
AHS can change your life if you want to change your life.
He's the author of many books, and Jerry has worked closely with Nickelodeon and Sesame Street Sesame Street on its Parental Addiction Initiative. He's basically one of the leading experts in the world on how to talk to children about alcohol and drugs, and we are so excited to have him today. A fun fact about Jerry is he runs a half marathons for children's charities at Disney, and so give him a big Memphis warm round of applause, Mr. Jerry Meadows.
Good morning. I tell you, I've got so much technology up here, I'm afraid I'm going to screw something up. So please bear with me. I'm blessed to be here. When I come here, what I reflect upon is the first time I was ever asked to speak at a conference. It was an addiction conference. I'd been working in treatment for maybe 2 years, and I had never even attended a conference. Now they want me to speak at one. It was a 2-day conference. They gave me 15 minutes on the second day, right before it closed. And I was off in the side room talking about prevention and talking about kids. And little did I know, people were leaving. They were getting their certificates. They were on their way. So I went in and I thought, how in the world am I going to talk about this subject for 15 minutes? There's absolutely no way in the world I'll be able to do that. And I get there and I'm freaked. And I look at the audience, there are 2 people. One of whom was my mom, sitting next to Dad. And I tell you, they took it seriously. We'd like you to fill out this form about your speaker today. Hey, I'm your kid. Come on, really? Come on. And so I know we've got a mixed audience. There are students here. And it's funny, when I finally graduated with my master's degree, I told myself, that's it for learning. You know, that's it. No more of that. I'm done with that. And yet, as I try to serve children and families, what I realize is I've always had to keep learning because things keep changing. And in the name of prevention, isn't it about time that we made programs fit kids and stop making kids fit programs? Oh, you know, the importance of doing that. So there are students here, there are people in the helping professions here. Thank you for the incredible difference that you make. And I know there are some recovering people here in the audience as well. And are we blessed or what? You've heard Jack say it, and Jack, this is really for you this morning. When he got a hold of me and said, hey, we're doing this conference, and I want you to know that every dollar that we make, we invest back into a program. I mean, my goodness, why in the world isn't everybody doing that in the United States? So thank you, Jack, so much for the opportunity. I'm a children and family counselor. I retired the beginning of last year after 44 years of working in treatment, always doing prevention kind of work. I'll tell you just a sentence about that to give you context, and then we'll begin where we're going. And I was retired for about 6 months and a lot of prayer. And what came back was, I need to go back just a little bit and give back all the many gifts and blessings that I've been giving through all these years. All the mentors and all the teachers who shaped and guided and influenced me through all these years. So that's why I'm here. Right before the pandemic hit, the last children's program that I was doing. And to put it in context, I spent the last 24 years at the Betty Ford Center, running a children's program for 7 through 12-year-olds. And you might ask, why 7 through 12-year-olds? Well, I saw there was a real big gap in service. And I want to get boys and girls before they take that first cigarette, that first drink, or that first drug. Because for some, all it takes is that first time, and they're off to the races. This children's program, though, is open to all children. You don't need to have somebody in treatment. That would be a mistake. Think about how few people make it to treatment. And they've got children, and they've got grandkids. So this is a program open to all kids. And in Mrs. Ford and Betty Ford herself, no child is ever turned away from our program due to an inability to pay. Our biggest referral source is Children's Protective Services. So we're doing the last program right before the epidemic. And I'll tell you that what I've learned is that boys and girls who've been through a lot of trauma, what's the best thing that I can do for them? Build a relationship with them. be a caring, nurturing adult. And that once a week for an hour just wasn't cutting it. So we do this program, first phase of it, 4 days, 25 hours with boys and girls. And then we do group, we play, we eat, we swim, we hang out together. Little boy comes, his name is David. First morning, an hour into the program, we do introductions. What's your first name? How old are you? And who in your family might have been trapped by addiction? And we're going around and we get to David. The only thing David will say is his first name. He's not giving up anything else. And you know what? I'm not in a hurry. It's okay. Let him be right where he is. He doesn't need to enter my world. I need to enter his. And all day long, I'm just watching. I'm watching, and a little girl, oh my gosh, 10 years old. Her name is Abby. Little girl says in the whole group, about 2 hours in, can I just share one thing? My mom started using drugs again last week. And I'm living with grandma. And I'm scared. She starts to cry. So I'm looking around the group, and all of a sudden you look at David, who will only tell us his first name, and that's all. You can see him just kind of, wiping the tears. I mean, he was there, he was focused. Fast forward 4 hours, we're getting out, and we swim with kids. We get out of the pool, and we're walking back, and in the best compliment a child could ever give me as a children's therapist, he comes up from behind and puts his hand in mine. And we're walking, he's holding my hand, and I'm thinking, boy, am I blessed? Geez, my goodness. And we're walking, and all of a sudden he stops. And I stop. And he looks at me and says, Jerry Moe, can I ask you a question? And I look at him and said, you can ask me whatever you want. And I'm thinking, oh, here, it's going to get good now. He's going to tie all this together, right? And he looks at me and says, how long have you been at the Betty Ford Center? And I didn't think about it. I looked right at him and I said, I have been here over 20 years. You should have seen the look on this kid's face. His eyes got real big and his jaw dropped. His mouth was open and he's shaking his head. He looks at me and says, gosh, Jerry, you must have lots of problems. And I'm dumbfounded, and he sees that, and he goes on and says, my mom, she's kind of messed up. Don't tell her I said that. But she only needs to be here for a few weeks. Now, is that supposed to help us? I don't know. So welcome to my world. This morning, I just want to do a few things with you. We'll get right to the PowerPoint. But the hardest part when I do a presentation is first couple minutes, because I've been accused of having a brain like an Etch-a-Sketch. And then my mind's filled with all this information. I shake my head just a little bit, all of it erases. How in the world could I remember the last time I was in Memphis when I was at the airport in Dallas yesterday, and I still couldn't find my glasses? How in the world does that work? So I just want to say that unlike when I would speak and then run to do something else and have phone calls and emails and stuff, when I'm finished this morning, I'm going to stick around all day. So if you'd like to visit, if you're looking for a good book for kids, if you want to talk about a little boy or girl that that you're worried about, I just want to serve you today. I mean, that's the best way that I can honor all of you for the work that you do. Just doing that right there. And so let's begin. Through a child's eyes, understanding addiction and recovery. Look, it works. Unbelievable. So, art is a powerful therapeutic tool to use with children, because often children can draw what they initially can't say. And if they're willing, if boys and girls are willing to do this, they draw this picture. I'll explain it to you in just a moment. And then the next day, only if they want to, they can share that picture in their little group. And when kids hold up this powerful visual that other boys and girls can look at, react to, have questions, make comments, identify with, have feelings about, talk about letting go of that feeling that I'm the only one, which I think just adds to the stigma significantly, because we're not talking about this. But the key in all of this, one of the basic keys in my work with little kids, is teaching them how to do this. Teaching them how to separate the person they love whether it's mom, dad, brother, sister, grandma, grandpa, all of the above, how to separate that person that they love from the disease that does this, that just consumes them. And look at what kids see. Kids see the disease, and kids see how people's beauty and goodness just gets enveloped in that. And you know, I'm a fairly quick learner. What I learned with little kids, 7 to 12, is when I'm with them and I say, hey, tell me about your mom's use of that pain medication. Tell me about dad's drinking. Hey, would you tell me about when your sister smokes marijuana every day? When I frame it that way, think about what I'm doing. I'm asking boys and girls to betray and be disloyal to the very person they love and to the family. And it creates a lot of anger and upset and confusion and guilt and shame. But when you reframe it for them, you know, let's talk about addiction. Let's talk about the disease that takes the people we love away from us. Let's talk about the disease that wreaks havoc on everyone in a family, that takes everybody hostage. 12-year-old girl, first day of the program, I don't think she said more than a sentence. End of the day, we're getting ready to leave. We circle up, we say the serenity prayer. But right before we do that, I asked anybody learn anything today? And this really wise, beyond her years, 12-year-old raises her hand and says, I learned one thing today. And I, well, what? What did you learn? And she said that addiction turns the people we love into strangers. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And I'm looking at my co-facilitator. I said, write that down real quick. I'm going to etch a sketch it. I know it. Write it down. So, you know, I'm not an expert. And anybody that calls me an expert is way off base. Because really, the experts are the boys and girls and the families that I'm able to serve. So, I'm going to show you a series of artwork that little boys and girls have done. But here's the instructions. We have worked for them 6 hours with them for 6 hours that first day. And then we take out paper and markers. And we say, draw a picture about how addiction has hurt your family. Let's tell them the disease, because the disease hates it when we tell the truth. And we speak with power. So how has addiction hurt your family? Take a look. When this 12-year-old girl shared this picture, I'm looking at it. On the inside, I'm doing cartwheels. Yes. Look how she separated the disease from the people that she loves. Look how big addiction is. Look at its teeth. Look at its claws. And as she described the next day, that's my sister, that's my mom, and that's my dad. Steel band. And she says, they're all trapped by addiction. And she takes a breath and tears streaming down her face. And she says, am I next? Can you imagine? Am I next? Everybody in my family gets this. And how cool is it being able to look at her and say, not necessarily. Not necessarily do you need to be next. How has addiction hurt your family? For this boy, 10 years old, look at this. There's a family all together, plus addiction. And the family gets torn apart. Here's a story that I hear so often. Here's a mom and a dad, both in recovery 5 or 6 years. Dad gets hurt at work, serious injury, hurts his back, starts taking pain medication. All of a sudden, the pain medication gets out of control, and it just continues. This is a family that has a lot of money. And the one thing in my years of working in treatment, money often gets in the way of people getting help because it can buy their way out of all consequences. But you know what? It got to the point where their nanny quit and Children's Protective Services came and took those kids. And that's what he's drawing about right there. Everybody was crying. CPS came with the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. They were not able to take care of their kids anymore. This is how addiction has hurt our family. Now, sometimes boys and girls get hurt more by what doesn't happen than by what does. Little girl in a children's program, 9 years old. Her name is Gloria. And I know this is a tough one. It's how to focus. But I hope you can see there's one tear coming out of her eye. She draws this picture, and the next day she proudly shares it. She says, you know, I go, my mom and dad are divorced, and I go and spend every other weekend with my dad. And here's what happens a lot of times. Mom had no clue about any of this. Why? That little girl doesn't want to say anything. She's a smart little kid. You know what's at risk? Being able to see your dad. Come on. Being able to see your dad. She says, Jerry, I get my own breakfast when I'm with my dad. Proudly tells the group. As if it's, you know, this really great thing. I get lunch. And she says, and I sleep in that chair. And in a group of just little kids. Gloria, how come you sleep in that chair? You're just a little kid. You just sleep in a bed. Come on, if you have one available, come on. Why? And she goes, you don't understand. Sometimes my dad is asleep the whole weekend. Dad, methamphetamine addiction. Newton's third law of physics, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. He'll go 72 hours speeding and then sleep. And she says, when I wake up, I get off the chair and I go next to the couch and I put my ear and my cheek right next to my dad's mouth. How come you do that? I want to make sure he's still breathing. You know, it's amazing. In our children's program, virtually my entire career, when we talk to boys and girls, we always say, what we say here stays here. Unless you have been hurt, in danger of being hurt, or you've hurt someone else, then we might need to tell somebody. And we do that every single day. And you know what? Even though boys and girls know that, they break that rule. Because kids want to get help. And she came to me, and Silver comes to me at the end of the day and says, you're going to talk to my mom, aren't you? And I go, yeah. Be honest with kids, please. Part of the difficulty is no one ever tells them the truth. Got to make sure it's age appropriate. Got to tell them the truth. And I say, yeah, I'm going to talk to your mom. And she looks at me and says, I hate you. I'm not coming back here anymore. She was scared. And we never know what's going to happen. My first obligation is to that little girl to make sure she stays safe. But you know, all of a sudden, Dad lost custodial rights. And you know what? Dad ended up in treatment. He's in recovery today. You just don't know. We don't know. How has addiction hurt your family? Kids hurt too. Mom and dad stop fighting. I'm here to tell you there's only been 3 research studies. It blows me away. Only 3 research studies in North America the last 50 years that asks the experts, ask little kids, ask adolescents, what hurts most when you're growing up in a family where there's addiction? And you know what? 3 studies done in different decades, done by different researchers, done at different universities, all came to the same conclusion. What kids say hurts the most is the family conflict, is watching the people you love hurt each other in a whole variety of ways. And so often kids get stuck in the middle. How has addiction hurt your family? 4:30 on a Tuesday afternoon. And there's Mom on the other side of that door with a locked door. Mom addicted to alcohol, addicted to prescription drugs. And no matter how hard they knock, they can't wake her up. How frightening that has to be. And I asked, well, why don't you call your dad? You don't understand, Jerry. My dad's going to get mad at my mom. They're going to talk about getting a divorce. My goodness. Just a couple more, we'll move on. How has addiction hurt my family? Here's an 11-year-old boy home from school. Dad's overdosed. And there's that little boy that calls 911, and here comes 911, and they administer 5 hits of Narcan, 5 hits. And you see Dad finally coming to. And if you've ever given Narcan to anybody, you know that for some people, they have that kind of a herky-jerky violent response. So taking care of your parents. A before and after. How has addiction hurt my family? This is a before and after. So here's mom. Here's the same mom on a methamphetamine relapse. How can I tell? Look at the rings under her eyes. Look how skinny she is in all of this. And the little girl who drew this picture ended up in our children's program as a result of her 5th grade teacher who couldn't understand why one of the brightest students in her class couldn't stay awake during the school day. Can you imagine how embarrassing? That little girl was setting her alarm clock every 2 hours to get up and to look for mom, to make sure mom was okay. Look at the significant amount of trauma these boys and girls face. This actually was on the NBC Nightly News a couple of years ago. So start on our left-hand side. There's dad in an accident. Dad, again, another person been in long-term recovery. Dad in an accident hurt his neck and his spine and taken pain meds. But look at all the pills on the table. On the bottom, there is mom confronting dad. Hey, you're out of control with all of this. Let's go get some help. And dad slugs her, hits her. And then all of a sudden, mom calls all the doctors, and all of a sudden, dad can't get opiates. You know this story. Dad can't get the opiates, so now he starts using heroin. And what do we got with heroin today? We got fentanyl. And what do we got with fentanyl now? What we call in California on the streets, tranq, that animal tranquilizer that's added to fentanyl. And you look up, dad gets arrested for possession. Dad goes to jail up at the top, and he gets out. Never again, he promised. For those of you who are familiar with adverse childhood experiences, look at how many there are in that one picture. My goodness. Okay. And the last one. And I will never, ever, no matter how many presentations I have left in me, not show this one. There is a little girl with her mom. It's Friday night. And that mom says to her daughter, "You are too much. I am leaving." Imagine the guilt and the shame. And isn't it about time there's someone to explain to this little girl, you need to understand your mom is sick. She's trapped by addiction. She needs to drink and use drugs in order to just feel okay in all of this. So, what do we know? Addiction is a family disease. Substance use disorder is a family disease. And I just use the word addiction because substance use disorder is not an age-appropriate thing to say to little kids. You just don't get it. We need to be careful of the language that we use. And it is 2023. And you know what's still going on? My entire career, children are the first hurt and the last help. Think about it. First hurt, last help. That needs to change somehow. And you begin to see, look at this multi-generational cycle. How it just gets passed from generation to generation to generation. Brand new research study out. I didn't even have a slide because I couldn't get it yet. Addiction Policy Forum in Washington, D.C. was working with the University of Washington. They just released a study. And for those of you in school, you want to take a look at this. It's called Patient Journey Mapping. It's about talking to people across the United States and all different levels of care. You know what they found? 85% of the people in treatment today have a positive family history of addiction that goes back on average at least 2 generations. And it's not just the addiction that gets passed along. It's the trauma. It's the mental health problems. It's the violence. All of those things. All of those things. And what we know, what the science tells us, is that these are boys and girls at risk. And I'll just briefly talk about 3. In risk for addiction, and at risk for mental health challenges, and at risk for child maltreatment. We could never put together another population of children and adolescents that are at more risk for growing up and themselves becoming addicted to alcohol and other drugs. Number 1 at-risk group. Did genetics play a part? Absolutely. Biological predisposition. Addiction tends to run in families. But you know what we don't talk enough about? It's not only addiction that tends to run in families, recovery tends to run in families too, if we provide opportunities. Now, come on, it's in the jeans, the slacks, the skirt, the shorts, whatever it is you're wearing, it's in there somewhere. But what boys inherit and girls, what boys and girls inherit is not addiction. What they inherit is the biological vulnerability to it. It's more than just genetics. Genetics play a huge part. Environment plays a huge part too in all of this. I was doing a children's program. 3 siblings come to the program. And I'm often asked, I get interviewed, I'm often asked, would you put 3 siblings in the same children's group? And my response to this, more times often than not, yes. Why? They've gone through this disease together. Let's have them go through recovery together too. And the only time I've ever seen that be contraindicated is when the oldest is like the mom or the dad to the little ones. Because I don't want the oldest to be the parent. I want him to be a little kid in this process. So here comes 3 kids, 12-year-old boy, 9-year-old girl, 7-year-old boy. And they come in. We play for the first hour, just building relationship. Best thing that we can do before we begin to do introduction. So the 12-year-old introduces himself and says his age. And he says this. He says, well, you know what? Like, mom said if I come here for 4 days, I get a new video game. And that's why I'm here. And so we start talking about video games. And just as long as he's not playing Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty, I'm okay with it. Really, come on now. Go around the group. 9-year-old little girl. And it was amazing. She thought, I was fascinating, didn't figure this out till the end of the program. As each day went on, that voice got louder and stronger. Fascinating. And you know what she said? She said, sometimes mom and dad fight and I get really scared. And right next to her is one of the most gifted therapists I've ever worked with, my co-pilot, her name is Carol. And that little girl buried her face right into Carol's ribs and held on. Someone that she didn't know 75 minutes ago. So we're going around the group and we get to the last one. We get to the 7-year-old named Jeffy. His name is Jeffy. Oh, I love that kid. Because you know, if you really want to know what's going on in the family system, make it safe and ask the youngest member of the family. Because the younger we are, the closer we are to the truth. Should have seen this kid. He was last. He was sitting on the edge of his seat, waiting for me just to give the nod, just say, go ahead. And when I called on him, Jeffy, how about you? He doesn't give his name. He doesn't give his age. First thing he says, let me tell you what's going on in our family. At which point, I had to look at the 12-year-old brother who's here like this. He says, my daddy, and this is, I'm trying to compare it, the speed of what he was saying. My daddy goes in the bathroom, and he's in there for like an hour. He never functions. Which, can you imagine with little kids, all this kind of laughter. But I smell smoke. There's smoke in the bathroom. What am I telling myself? Dad's smoking drugs in the bathroom. There's smoke in the bathroom. And I don't know how he figured this out. If somebody told him or it was his own conclusion. And then he said this. And then the door opens. And an alien comes out of my dad's body. He hurts my mom. My mom, she's on the floor, Jerry. And then my brother, now take a look at brother, who came for a video game. He has just his hands in his face. He goes, my brother tries to get help, but sometimes dad gets him before he gets to the door. And my sister, who now is holding on to Carol even tighter, you know, she goes under her bed in her room, and I go in the closet. And I won't come out until the alien is gone. And then he stops and he sighs and he looks at me. I'll never forget as long as I'm alive. He looks at me and says, you think you can help us? Oh. Biological predisposition and psychological hurt and pain. What a powerful combination that so often leads so many to get this disease that they never asked. It's a study done at the University of Columbia. Here we go. I'll do it this way. No safe haven study. That was a remarkable study done. It came out in 2000, but you can Google it. Because what they looked at is they wanted to find out why over the course of 10 years, the number of reported cases of suspected child abuse almost tripled in the United States of America. Is it more issues? Is it better reporting? What in the world is going on? And what the study found was this, that boys and girls growing up in families where there's substance use disorder are almost 3 times more likely to get physically abused. They're almost 3 times more likely to get sexually abused. But they're over 4 times more likely to be neglected. And I think sometimes we just don't talk enough about the neglect and the impact that can have on kids when the people you love just are disconnected and not there for a whole lot of different reasons. You know, I was hired as a consultant by the University of South Carolina. It was in the latter part of the 1990s. So the Child Advocacy Group for the state of South Carolina did a 1-year campaign. And get this, they got pro bono 1 week with a couple of top executives on Madison Avenue that do all advertising kind of stuff. They came and spent a week with them, focused on it. And they came up with a tagline that I knew was used in a lot of different states. It went like this. Here was their tagline. Alcohol abuse, ... drug abuse, ... child abuse. One thing often leads to another. And then they gave you a number to call 1-800-SC for South Carolina Cares. SC Cares. Mental health. You know, just 2 sentences about recent. We have a crisis in mental health today with our youth, and we're not talking about it enough. You know, one of the ways that I saw that just one person, just one child and family therapist, the number of calls I got from people all across the United States with this dynamic. We have to shelter in place. I'm cut off from school. I'm cut off from where I worship. I'm cut off from my friends, from sports, from whatever activities I'm involved in. The number, and this is just me talking, nobody else, the number of calls I would get for adolescent girls who all of a sudden were beginning to have memories of being abused when they were little. Because they had all this time on their hands. What were they seeing? Alcohol and drug use increases, cutting, all of those things. We've got a huge crisis on our hands with all of this. The boys and girls that I see often, depression, anxiety, PTSD, at risk for all of those. This is how the study concluded. This is how the study concluded. These are the most vulnerable and endangered people in the United States. Frame it. That came out in 2000. That came out in 2000. So many places that I go to these days have surging methamphetamine again. This is before the opioid, heroin, fentanyl epidemic. This is before a lot of states started legalizing marijuana. Marijuana is legalized in California. You got to teach kids, no, you can't take candy. You can't take sex, can't take that from other kids. So, well, everything I told you is true. Now I want to focus on this with you. You know, if I had a coin in my pocket, and on one side of the coin it said at risk, those of you who work with kids and adolescents and even adults in treatment for addiction or mental health problems, if at one side of the coin it says risks, I ask you today, flip that coin over where it says a promise. Boys and girls that I work with are kids with promise, huge promise. And with the right relationships, with communities coming together to help them, where they feel like they belong somewhere. Oh, what an incredible difference that can make. Kids at risk can be children of promise. Prevention works. That's why I'm here. Early intervention works. But it's always about building relationships. You know, I don't know about you, but I am tired of people getting shot. Are you kidding me? Where's the respect for everybody? And the kindness and the caring? And it might sound simplistic and there's so many things involved. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. And so with that in mind, I'm going to talk about resilience with you. How is it that so many boys and girls can grow up in families with hardship and adversity and challenges? You know, when I went out to work at the Betty Ford Center, which is in the desert of Southern California. Thank you for the rain. That was awesome this morning. Are you kidding me? Never in my life have I looked at my phone and it said the forecast, 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%. You know, what I always strive for in school. Wow. All right, now we'll resume our regularly scheduled program. Where I live has the 5th highest child poverty in America. Why? Because you have a lot of people coming over from the border of Mexico. Had no clue until you work with kids for a while and understand at every group we need to feed them. And when we can't send them home with food, just the challenges and hardships. And if the day ever comes, I forget to remember what a huge miracle it is that some kids simply make it to school on a daily basis. Please, Lord, may I never forget that. Oh, keep getting knocked down and keep getting back up. It's resilience, despite the challenges. And I've got a really simple brain, and that's why working with kids makes the most sense. And I love it when it's simple. Successful adaptation, despite the risks. And I gotta know I am not the only person in this room that developed resiliency when I was a little boy. A lot of you did too. And we'll never have resilient children and adolescents in America unless there are resilient adults who lead the way. Because don't tell me, show me in all of this. And so when all the people that were working with me doing children's program, at the end of a day, at the end of all day working with kids, we always talk about the 3 S's. How well did we do? Strengths, supports, and skills. Strengths, boy, you know what? I need to hold up a mirror and let kids see all the beauty and goodness inside. I need to find that kid that's a leader and give them opportunities during this children's program to lead. I want to find those kids that are incredibly creative with their artwork or their drawing, and kids that are athletic, the kids with a big heart, or the boys and girls that treat everybody younger than them, with dignity and respect. Skills, what kind of skills are we talking about? Just life skills. How do I make friends? How do I develop social skills? How do I learn to communicate with you so I can let you into my world maybe a little bit more at a time, day by day? How about skills just dealing with stress? Problem-solving skills, coping strategies, refusal skills, self-care. And then we think about support. We teach boys and girls a concept and simply call it safe people. Who are the safe people in your lives? Sometimes it's somebody in your family. Maybe it's a grandma. Maybe it's a mom or a dad. Older brother or sister is incredibly wise and caring. Is it somebody at school? Is it with sports? Is it a neighbor? Is it where you go practice your faith? We all need safe people in our lives. And how do we do that with boys and girls? How do we begin to teach them those skills? Well, hopefully we begin to model it. And so, let's talk about healing stages for kids. First thing we want to do when I work with boys and girls, in the name of prevention in a treatment setting, is I want to teach them about what addiction is. You've heard me talk about that for just a little bit. When children experience trauma in their lives, and there's plenty of it these days, when kids experience trauma and no one explains it to them in an age-appropriate way, all of a sudden they're a teenager. And if nobody explains that trauma to them in an age-appropriate way, pretty soon they're adults. And they're holding on to this incredible amount of trauma and abuse and mental health issues. And isn't that what we address in treatment all the time? How huge it is to be able to work through those things in order for people to have any chance to have some sustained long-term recovery in all of this. So what kids do, nobody tells them. Kids make up a story for it all to make sense. I'll make up a story. There's 3 things I see in that story. And again, this is just me. 3 things. Number 1, the story is egocentric. They make the story about themselves. Why? Because they're little kids. They see themselves as being the hub of the universe. So it must somehow be about me. I did something wrong. I wasn't good enough. I messed up. For all my brothers and sisters that work in treatment, aren't those words we hear from the clients we serve every day? Oh. Second, it's erroneous because no one's explained anything to kids anyway. And here's what I think is a double-edged sword for little kids. Little kids take it all in, a lot more than we give them credit for. But they don't have the cognitive skills yet to interpret it correctly. It's like having, and this is a terrible analogy, but it's like having this awesome duplicating machine. You know, when we're making copy machine, and yet it doesn't have the function to collate. It just keeps coming out, and it's getting all over the place. But thirdly, so it's egocentric, it's erroneous, but it becomes a life script that really thwarts human growth and development as I get older. How often do we hear from the adults? How often do we hear from the family members of people I'm trying to serve? I don't deserve this. Everybody I get to, it's messed up. It's always on me. I'll never be able to do this. I can't do any of this. In the 3 treatment centers that I've worked at, I've always been the kid guy. And so adults in treatment will often come to me for the kid stuff. And I can't tell you how many women and men through the years have come to me to let me know that they were sexually abused, which is like this really big, huge step. And walked through that. And they were 7 or they were 9 years old. And you know what I'd often say to them? I'd sit with them and then bring them back to their counselor, and we work through all of that. I'd tell them how sorry I am about what happened to them, how angry I am about what happened to them, and how no way could it ever be their fault. But then I'd always say, I want you to come to where we eat lunch in the children's program tomorrow. And they'd come, and I'd always pick a kid the age that that adult had been abused to see how little they were. Just a little boy or a little girl, are you kidding me, in all of this? My goodness. So reframing that. And I want to change the narrative. I want to teach kids it's not their fault. They're not to blame. Kids don't make people they love drink or use drugs. They don't make the people they love hurt them in a whole variety of ways or forget about them. And if they could make it better, you know that they would. So I know how hard most of them have tried, and it simply doesn't work. I got a call, I don't know, maybe about 8 years ago. It was December 23rd. And I answered my phone in my office, and the person on the other end just started crying hysterically. And I just said, hey, look, just take your time, catch your breath. You can have as much time as you want. He finally caught his breath, and it was a grandpa. And he and grandma had brought these 2 wonderful little girls to the children's program. Their mom just couldn't get well, despite many opportunities. And he said, Jerry, it happened. Last night, my daughter died of a heroin overdose. And the girls leave smiling. Taught me something really important that day. They said, okay, all right, would you like me to come to where you are? Would that be more helpful for you? And you know what he said? Oh, Jerry, you don't understand. The girls want to come where you are. Safe place. And they came. What do you say? What do? You listen. You let them talk. You let them share their sadness. Just let them get it all out. And they did. And they're getting ready to leave. And the 9-year-old looks at me, feisty little one she is, and says, you told me one time if I ever needed you, you'd help me. And I go, that's right, I said that. And she looked at me and says, well, I'm going to need you to come with me a week from Friday when we say goodbye to my mom. I want you to be there and bring Megan, another one of the counselors. And we went, and I can't even tell you how many of those things that I have gone to. And after a bunch of them, how I had to go back and see my therapist because of all the stuff that was going on with me. Okay, and so there they are, and there are 5 people talking and had a beautiful picture of this mom. Oh, look beautiful, mid-30s. And 4 or 5 people talked. And what I found fascinating is nobody talked about the elephant in the living room. Nobody talked about how mom passed away, family and friends. And this 12-year-old girl gets up at the end, and I'm thinking, what are you doing? And went up front of the church with her grandpa next to her and says, I just got to share something with you. Just thank you for all coming, but you need to know something about my mom. She got trapped by addiction. She's using drugs. And when she was trapped, my mom did some bad things, but she's not a bad person. I'm always going to love my mom. And I hope you can remember the good stuff about my mom and love her too. It's like, oh, are you kidding me? While the words were incredibly meaningful and showed some of the things she learned in the children's program, to me, what was most remarkable upon reflection a couple of days later, she said this with no embarrassment, with no guilt, with no shame. This is what happened to my mom, and I love her. And Tony spoke this morning about getting rid of stigma and coming together and learning about this stuff. It's so important in that process. I would never come here and just show you pictures of kids, this is a disease, because we do continuing care every week for kids and their family members. And so here they draw about, how do we know we're getting better? And look at this 14-year-old group. Look at the top, recovery. You have to earn it. Intense. There's not a shred of codependency in that picture whatsoever. You have to earn it. We did not allow alcohol, drugs, nicotine, boundaries in the house. Look at the waste management. And this girl who adores her dad, I said, what's that? What's that key? She goes, that's my dad's key. Well, why don't you hand it to him? She goes, Jerry, that's my dad's key. We need to move on. We're on the other side of that door. I hope dad could join us someday. But that's dad's key. He's got to work on that. Dr. Claudia Black, hey, if you ever want to read, because she just redid this book. Completely updated. One book, the only book I'd suggest. It's called It Will Never Happen to Me. Dr. Claudia Black. It will never happen to me. It'll be on the exam we're having in a few minutes. In there, she talks about the family laws of addiction. Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. Family laws of addiction. Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. And look at this crazy, your crazy friend from California. Look what I'm trying to do every day. This is what allows kids to survive. And what am I telling them? Trust me. Talk to me. Tell me about you, how you feel. Let me enter your world somehow. And some kids do it quick. Other kids take a while. You know, when you're a farmer, man, I met some relatives about 5 years ago that I never knew that I had, and they're still farming in Wisconsin. You throw the seeds, you work the soil, and you let go. And I got to always just keep throwing seeds in all of this to see where it takes place. So that second phase is opening doors. Opening doors to our mind. Opening doors to our heart. Opening doors to our spirit. Addiction is a disease of isolation and silence, and secrecy and shame and stigma. Huge stigma in all of us. So how can we do it when we're working with little kids or their grown-ups? How can we get them to open a door a little bit? Or the windows that have been nailed shut, take the nail on, open it just a little bit, let a little fresh air get in there, let a little bit of light come into the room in all of this. And an activity that we do, that we use, is the bag of rocks. I got in a little trouble with TSA in Albuquerque a few years back. But this is a bag back home. It's filled with rocks, 45 pounds of rocks. How do I know it's 45 pounds? Because I used to take it wherever I went, and the airlines would always want more money, weigh the bag. Thank God they don't charge you for emotional baggage. I couldn't come here today. I couldn't afford it. And so it's a bag with 45 pounds of rocks, and all the kids carry it. It's a great, it's just a wonderful activity. There was a little girl one time in a children's program, and I love little kids when they feel safe. They're so random. We're starting a program, and this little girl comes up to me, and I'm sitting down just watching what it looks like, and everybody comes in. And she goes, "Hi, I'm Gloria. I weigh 43 pounds. Do you know when it was her turn to pick up the bag? We're doing this experiential activity. When it was her turn to pick up the bag, I already in my mind said, she's got to go last. Because if it doesn't work, I don't want to mess with the energy. All this about energy and keeping it rolling and growing and grooving and grooving. And she was last. You know what that little girl did? 43 pounds. She picked it up. 10 and 11-year-old boys are there. And then she started rocking back and forth. Started doing the rocking. I slid across that group room and supported her back. We're not going there. The stuff that we carry inside. All the wreck. Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, you know what it calls it? The wreckage of our past. I do a lot of work with the Navajo, the Apache, and the Seminole tribes. You know what they call it in their culture? The basket of burden that they say can go back 7 generations. Look at the stuff that we carry. And you know what? If I am 10, 12, 14, and I'm carrying all this stuff, and little kids see this, 7-year-old said, "This is ridiculous." What? My response. So we do it therapist. Look at all of this. And you know what? When I drink, and I can start with nicotine, fast-acting drug. Oh my goodness. I can smoke, I can drink, I can use drugs. Look what happens for a few minutes. Wow. Yeah. How many people do we work with in treatment that will tell you the first time in their life they ever felt normal was the first time they got drunk or the first time they got high? Because for a few minutes the bag goes to sleep. And unfortunately, what happens to the bag? Alcohol or drugs wear off. And then what do? I got to pick up the bag. Does it weigh the same? No, it weighs more. Why? Because of the crazy things I've just done. Look at all the stuff that we carry around and helping kids. And boys and girls are incredible at doing this. Some kids, you saw artwork. Some kids will come to a program and not say a whole lot, but give them an opportunity to share a story. This is what addiction's done to my family. Have them write it. Oh, incredible. Other kids are verbal. Other kids are incredibly loquacious. Some kids do this in role play exercises, but beginning to open this up and let some of this stuff out that we carry around inside. Let some of that stuff out, a rock at a time. So, okay, I will tell you, and we're doing good. I'll tell you that. So I'm with my bag of rocks. I'm at the airport in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's about 5:20 in the morning. And I'm going back home, and I need this bag for a presentation I'm doing at the high school later that day. So no way am I checking my rocks. They might lose them. And so there's virtually no one at the airport yet. And so they put the rocks on the x-ray machine. And the TSA guy looks at me and says, "What's in that bag?" And with a straight face, I looked at him and said, "Those would be my feeling rocks." And he says, "We're going to have to look at those." Well, excitement and anticipation started surging through my body. Because we can do this work virtually anywhere. And so they took the bag and they put it on a little table. And they opened it up and they took out the sad rock. All the rocks were in their little baggies. They took out the sad rock. Now, this TSA guy was incredibly young. And he was a little bit shorter than I am. So what am I doing? I'm getting down like this so we're at eye level, whether it was appropriate to look or not. And he held it up and I said, "That is a sad one. Would you like to share a time?" And you know what? You know how they say two's company, three's a crowd? Here comes TSA supervisor. And he's like this. He is like this. The therapist in me wanted to take out the angry rock just to validate him. But that little sliver of reason in my brain didn't have me do that. So I got a letter. I can't bring them. I can't bring the rocks anymore, but they are here. The rocks have been in Memphis at least twice that I can remember. So helping kids begin to get this stuff out and to get a sense of validation. I am not the only one. And isn't it ironic and incredibly sad when today, because of opioids and heroin and fentanyl, we're talking almost 1 out of every 3 kids in America is growing up in a family where there's addiction. It's one of the things, and again, with mental health problems, one of those things that we simply don't talk about or don't address enough. And so, Oscar's 10 years old, and Oscar lives with a foster parent. But when I was still working at the center, we got a lot of referrals. I told you, from Children's Protective Service, a lot of law enforcement referrals. Why? Because we train the cops and the sheriffs when there's domestic cases. Hand out our brochure, please, or call us for help. And we do a lot for foster and for grandparents. And Oscar let me call him Oski. Oski was his nickname in the children's program. And on the 3rd day, he gets to sit across from his foster mom. And he's written a story. He's written 5 sentences. This is how addiction has hurt my family. And when it's his turn to share, he lets the paper fall to the floor. And he says, Jerry, I can't do this. And I go, okay, you don't have to do this. But look, your foster mom brought you here. Is there anything you want to say to her today? And he looks at her and says, thank you for taking such good care of me. Oh. And I looked at him and said, Oscar, how do you do that? How does she take good care of you? I have a bed to sleep in. You make me food. I can have as much as I want. And you help me with my homework. Superstar foster mom who's had a lot of foster kids through the years. And I said, is there anything else you want her to know? She's really listening, Oski. It's okay. And he looks at her and says, do you think I could have a nightlight in my room? And because by that time, again, we're with kids all day long, and I don't want to take a break because it's at lunch or it's walking somewhere where kids will tell you stuff that they don't want to say. I mean, every moment it can be huge. And I knew where he was going, and I said, tell her how come you want to foster. How come you want a nightlight? Tell your foster mom. And he looks at her and he says, right before I fall asleep, the last thing I think about is my dad. Where is he right now? Will I ever see him again? Does he really love me? And I get scared. And I get sad. And I'm thinking if I could have a nightlight, maybe that wouldn't happen as much. And she looks at him and says, Oscar, when we leave here today, first thing we're going to do is go get a nightlight for you. But you don't have to wait until it's bedtime. Anytime you need to talk to me about this kind of stuff, that's why I'm here. And when it's not a foster parent or a grandparent, but it's with a mom or dad that we have little kids. If I've learned one thing through the years, it's this: the only difference between the kids and the grown-ups is the grown-ups were yesterday's children that no one helped. How many more generations of that are we going to let happen? And so how about a couple of recovery pictures when kids are working on this stuff? So my favorite, it's one of my favorite pictures of all. How do we know we're getting better? So there is, in the black dress is Rosa with Lupita, with mom and with Abuela Rosa. How do we know we're getting better? Look at mom and grandma, nice words. We're saying nice things in our family. to one another. How do we know we're getting better? Because we're dealing with all the rocks in our bag, and we're dealing with them. We're holding on to the ones we like, but we're letting go of the other ones. We talk about them, we share them, we feel them, and we move beyond it. Next, as my time gets short, self-care. Teaching kids how to do self-care. And for adults in treatment, if self-care isn't a part of their relapse prevention program, we are really missing something when we're talking about addiction and mental health issues. Who are the safe people? Making a map. What makes somebody safe? You know, it'd be really easy for me to say, it's your grandma. Your grandma's your safe person. And for you, it's Mrs. Callis who lives next door. I know she cares about you. And for you, it's your coach. That's easy for me to say. What are you going to do when I'm not around anymore? I don't want to give you the fish. I want to teach you how. And every day, teaching boys 5 important ways to take care of ourselves, our body and our mind. How do we think about stuff? How is it that some people see a glass where the water's just in the middle? How is it that some people see that as half gone and other people see that as half full? All a matter of perspective in terms of how we see things. Our body, our mind, dealing with feelings, dealing with our spirit. And if nothing else for spirit, just that sense of connection that we can have to one another. People don't get better alone, they get better together. Kids, adolescents, and adults, and to feel a part of something where you belong. That's what gives people hope. I'm not in this on my own. And the kid part, teaching kids how to be kids while they're kids, so they don't want to be kids while they're adults having kids. I hope I said that right. His name was Lawrence, 7 years old, going on 65. I have never seen a kid more parentified. Lawrence, first morning in the children's program, everybody makes a little name tag they put on. So because it's the counselor's job to know your first name or an appropriate nickname within the first 30 minutes. Why? Feedback I get all the time. I love it when you call me by my name. I see him. He's got 6 name tags ripped up. You know, he's about to go nuclear. And it's like, no. So I run and get 2 name tags. I get 2 name tags. It's the only kid in the history of the children's program at BFC that went double. Lawrence. He does the 2, and you know, and I get on my knees, and you see me, I do that here. I do that with kids all the time. I want to be on their level. Can you imagine me to go see a therapist today in Memphis that's 12'3"? How is that going to be safe for me? So much bigger? Come on. And so I go to Lawrence. I say, look, I'm Jerry, and I point to my name tag. And I said, do you think it would be okay for me to call you Larry while you're here? Well, he puts his marker down on the table, looks me up and down, and says, perhaps. And he's in a group, because every group is so different. Clinically, that's the exciting part for me. Every group is so different, and we got to flex. And he's in a group with mostly 7, 8, 9-year-olds, and they're serious. And so when there's a group like that, counselors need to balance it out. And so even though you know it's really hard for me to do, but you got to be silly and corny and joke around a lot. And I was doing that, and he'd say, stop it. Knock that off. And he finally got me. Oh, he put out the bait there right on the hook for me. The end of the first day. And what did I do? He looks at me. I say something. And he looks at me and says, what's the name of your supervisor? Dial it back, dial it back, dial it back, dial it back. So the next day, Grandma comes in. And you know what? I don't care how long I've done this, or that I've written books, or I've done other things. You think kids care about that? Absolutely not. Kids don't know about how much, or kids don't care about how much you know until they know about how much you care. Now, come on. And so Grandma comes in and says, could I see you for a minute? Oh, that always freaked me out. Alert, 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 alert. And I'm thinking, she's not here to tell me what a brilliant program we put together. and how it's helped her grandson tremendously. And so we go outside the room, and we're by the fish tank. And she says, I'm not sure what you're doing in this program. I asked Lawrence 3 times last night, and each time he told me, grandmother, I can't tell you, it's confidential. And I'm thinking, now I see where he gets it from. Okay, this is making sense. The pieces in the puzzle. And she says, again, I'm not sure what you're doing, but you know what? I got to thank you for one thing. I saw a smile this morning I hadn't seen in a really long time. She says, you know, if I'm being honest with you, the worst part of the day with Lawrence is getting ready for school. We're always a half hour late. He can't find his shoes, doesn't know where his backpack is, where's my homework. We both end up yelling at each other. It feels awful. He says, I want you to know this morning when I got up, Lawrence was fully dressed, both shoes tied, backpack at the door, and said, Grandma, hurry up. I don't want to be late today. 2 hours before the program was about to start. And when the program was over, we told Grandma she needed to go through the family program. Because when it came to her daughter, she wasn't being helpful with her mom, with her daughter's disease, just getting in the way. And Grandma goes through the children or the family program and starts to make changes, and they come every Wednesday night for kids night, where they're in a parent group and the kids group. And you know what? 6 months later, guess what happens? Mom decides she needs help and comes to treatment. You know, back in the day when I started, Dr. Murray Bowen, family systems theory. Make one change in the family and the whole family switches. And you know what? We need to be hitting that family with every intervention and prevention point possible. Because now mom's better and mom is going Wednesday nights. And then dad gets out of 5 years in the California Department of Corrections for a drug-related offense. And he wants help, and he goes to get help. And all of a sudden, this family is getting well. The entire family system started with a little kid. And as time goes on a Wednesday night, Larry comes running into my office and does this. Hey, Jerry, guess what? Next Friday night's like my 9th birthday. Mom and Dad said I could have a special friend come and spend the night. We're going to stay up really till like 10:45. I got candy. We're going to have pizza. I got new batteries for my flashlight. We're going to look for night crawlers. I stole 8 rolls of toilet paper. Going to TP the car. Going to TP the porch. Going to TP the tree. Going to TP the house. Going to ring the bell. Going to ring the bell. Going to ring the bell some more. Hide in the bushes. Watch Dad come out. Clip his lid. Larry was on fire. If I was to evaluate and assess in a real brief assessment, he had FKS, full kid status. The kid was back in Larry, and he looks at me and says, Jerry, special friend, my house, Friday night, 7 p.m. And I'm thinking, oh, no. Why did I not go to class in graduate school that one day they were talking about this? Oh, and before I could come up with a response, it's the end of the day, I don't know. There's nothing. He looks at me and says, ask your mom. And I did. She said no. Man, but the little kid was back. The little kid was back in Larry. And lastly, and look. You know, through the years, I've had a lot of adult children come up to me and say, where were you when I was a kid? And my response is, I ask myself that same question every day. And instead of spending years beating yourself up when you handled it with the resources you had at 8 or 11 or 14, we empower kids. And when she can't wake up her mom, what does she immediately do? She calls grandpa on the phone. That it's okay to ask for help. Find safe people that you can ask for help. And finding the buried treasure, all the beauty and goodness that people have inside. Again, holding up that mirror, helping people see their strengths. And instead of catching children when they're doing something wrong, why don't we catch them when they're doing something right? the importance of doing that and helping them begin to feel good about themselves and to feel a part of all the beauty and worth that they have inside. Check this out. My dad is in recovery. Me too. Somebody that I worked with said to me, "Oh, great picture. It's a shame she spelled the word recovery wrong." And I go, "What? She spelled it right? So you're going to go over to Sistine Chapel and say, look, oh, I can go Mr. Spot or Donatello or Raphael or one of the other Teenage Ninja Turtles? Come on, come on." You know, it's almost 8 years. In September of 2015, there was a rally on the Capitol Mall called Unite for Recovery. Almost 1 million people there supporting recovery. Family recovery. Wow, what a powerful group. And this was the poster that they used. They asked for permission. They carried that around. So if you were to Google Unite for Recovery, there you'll see this iconic picture of a dad in recovery with his daughter on his shoulders, holding up that sign. Holding up that sign and making more opportunities for people to find recovery. And so, start to wind this down. The presence of caring, nurturing adults in a child's life are critically important for resilience. And I'll be the first one to tell you, does our approach need to be evidence-based? Absolutely. Let's find it. Give them the best tools we have. Does it need to be trauma-informed? Today more than ever. But even those two aren't enough if we don't bring our heart and soul to this work. Because you know what? Programs don't heal people. People heal people. We can never forget that. Never forget that. And let's give the people who work for us all the best tools and skills. It's touching people's hearts. That's the thing that matters most. So I challenge you today, in my last few minutes, and you've been great. Love, L-O-V-E-E. Been spelling it this way for longer than I can remember. Because there's a child, and maybe that child is now an adolescent or an adult, that there's things that we could do. I want you to remember this. The L in love is to listen. Just listen. I was interviewed on NPR a while back, and they said, after all your years of working with kids, what have they said to you? Kids have told me two things through all the years. I wish more people would listen to me. And I wish more people would play with me. And I take the play part, really meaning give me attention, give me time. So listen with focused attention. The O is to observe. And when it comes to my work with little kids, oh my goodness, so many nonverbal cues. I want to look at how they're dressed. I want to look if they're just tired, if they're disheveled. I want to see what they do when it's snack time. Do they eat a snack like they haven't eaten in a long time? Do they put the snack in their pocket or ask you for a bag to put it in to take it home? And I look at tone of voice. I want to look at kids that tend to have a lot to say, that when you talk about a really tough subject, they have anything to say. Or kids all of a sudden want to talk a lot that never did. The V in love is to validate. Validate. From the Latin word validare, meaning to give strength to. I understand why you're confused. It's okay to be angry. I get it. It's all right to let out some of your sadness today. That's a terrible thing that happened to you. I had kids one time in a group who were in foster care, and they told me something that happened in foster care. And I got angry in group. I got angry in group. I didn't yell. I didn't scream, but I looked at them and said, that is absolutely not okay. As soon as we take a break, I'm going to leave you for 5 minutes. I'm going to call the lieutenant at the sheriff's office, and we're going to do something about this today. And that was the last day those people were ever foster parents. And just educated. And if I could only have you learn two things. Number one, that it's not your fault. You're just a little cat. You were just a little cat. And you were not alone. Feel that way often. And that last one is the E, to empower. I want to give you something. Long after you've forgotten about me, I want to give you something that you can take with you. And if I only had one thing that I hope you took with you, I hope that I had a decent of enough relationship with you that you would then go out and look for someone like me. Loving kids is so important. Sesame Street. So I just want to give you a couple of free resources that are wonderful. So I get a text, Sesame Street's looking for me. Immediate response, oh, who's messing with me now? That ain't right. Are you kidding? Don't go there. Sesame Street in 2019, right before the epidemic, released the Parental Addiction Initiative. It's a whole website. You're looking at Carly. Carly is 6.5 years old. According to the story that we developed, Carly's mommy is about to come home from treatment. Carly's mom is addicted to opiates. Carly's been in foster care. Why? Mom had no one to watch her. And you think it's about time we had more treatment centers for women and their kids? Man, Sesame Street called me because they found an activity that I created a really long time ago. And they found a copy of it with the bottom cut off, so it doesn't have my copy. I didn't know who did it. They were looking forever. I didn't know. It's called the 7 C's. Look how cool Sesame Street made it. You can actually go online and Carly will explain each of the 7 C's, and you can color them in with a mom or a teacher or a social worker, and then you can print it. I didn't cause it. I can't control it. I can't cure it. Those are the things I can't do. But it's not enough to tell kids what they can't do if we don't also tell them what they can. But I can help care for myself by communicating feelings, making healthy choices, and celebrating me. Sesame Street calls, so we have this talk, right? Sesame Street calls and says, we want to know what it's going to take for us to be able to use this activity. And I had to say it 3 times before I understood. Like, what do we have to give you? And I looked at them and I said, are you kidding me? Choice. To be associated with you? Oh my goodness. And we worked on the scripts. There's a wonderful video. If you go to this website I'm about to give you, where Elmo and his dad explain what addiction is to 6-year-olds. We worked for almost a year on that to get the wording just right. Great resources. Check that out, please. We're back in studio in June, and we filmed a whole new piece about safe people. You've been hearing me talk about safe people today. One of the things on there, they asked me to write something for parents in early recovery, people in early recovery. You know what they asked me to write about? How to rebuild trust in early recovery. Because you know what? That is a really sticky wicket. You know, my little kids don't understand all the pain that I've gone through to be able to have this much time, and I expect them to forgive me immediately and everything to be okay. It takes time. It just takes time. Little steps and all of that. I'm also associated with this not-for-profit advocacy group. Thank goodness I'm almost done. I can't talk anymore. Called the National Association for Children of Addiction. Two resources. And notice everything that I'm giving you is free. I have just finished rewriting them. It's called the Kit for Kids, about age 6 to about the age 13. Just a kit that either the child could use themselves or with somebody that cares about them. And the kit for parents. Oh, I got to tell you something. In the last 6 years, and these are both free and downloadable. I'll give you the website with the next slide. And then I'll wrap this up. You know what's interesting in the last 6 years? You know who's been downloading that? Grandparents. I actually work with 2 families where the boys and girls are living with their great-grandparents because grandparents and parents are mired in their disease. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Kit for parents or kit for grandparents. Let me end this way. First of all, it's been an honor to get to be with you today and get to work with Jack and all the great work that they do in prevention. Thank you for being kind and for being caring. And I'll just leave you with this. A couple of years ago, I got an envelope, a letter. It was red. It was right around Christmas time, and I opened it up. And it was one of those Christmas cards, holiday cards, where you put your picture in it. And there was a picture of a woman. And I looked, I said, I know her. Somehow I know her. Playing with two little kids in the snow. And then I opened it up, and there was a loose picture of what looked to be a grandpa with those same two little kids. He writes, liver's still bad. Sober 13 years. I love my granddaughters. She writes, thanks for giving my dad back. My daughters adore him. So look at the position that we're in as we work together, that we can change family legacies and let go of the disease and find health and wellness. And that's what I just wish that you can continue to do, and celebrate all that you work with and all of the folks that you work with as you do that, as you do so. Thank you very much.
Is this on? Okay, perfect. So, Fletch, we don't have time for Q&A, unfortunately, but Jerry will be here all day to answer questions. So if you want to meet him in the lobby, he will be more than happy to answer your questions. So to get things back on schedule, Fletch, can you put the QR code for the CEUs on the screen, please? And once that's on there, you can just use your cell phones to scan that QR code. It'll take you to a survey. Follow that survey. At the very end, it's going to show you the links to the certificates. Please save those, please, please, please. If you have trouble accessing them, go to either the registration table or our MAPC booth, and we can walk you through that. We can send you like the actual links themselves, not just the QR code. So please do that. Wait for that. Give you all a few minutes to get that sorted out. If you have any questions, please ask us. Yes.